Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jonathan Fisher. Well, it's happening again. The talking heads in business news are chattering on about market downturns, inflation, the potential for another recession, etc. Well, our guest today states that with the right strategies in place, you can make your sales team recession proof, able to perform in any market conditions. Meghann Misiak is an expert sales coach and consultant with a history of helping B2B companies boost each and every member of their sales team to elite level performance. In our talk today, Meghann will share the exact steps you can implement to reduce sales cycles, increase close rates, and boost average deal size in any market conditions. Meghann, fantastic to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, by way of introduction, Meghann, these insights about building a recession-proof team, I'm going to wager did not come to you automatically. Tell us just a little bit about how you came across the insights you'll be sharing with our listener today.
Yeah, so for me, I think that it's interesting when we, whether it's sales leaders or salespeople, some of us are going through our very first kind of shift in the market. A lot of the people that I've been talking to, it is their first time dealing in an unhealthy market. And it's interesting because a lot of us haven't realized how healthy of a market we've been in. And so when COVID hit, I personally don't think that I'm ever the smartest one in the room. And I'm like, okay, this is, for me, one of the biggest kind of catastrophes that I've dealt with business wise. So I went to a lot of other mentors and people who had been through other market shifts and asked for some help. So excited to to share a few things that worked for me in previous companies. But I do think the cool part of this is kind of why I got into sales training because I really wanted to learn how to sell in any environment. I wanted to learn how to be as good as I could. I didn't want to ever settle for, good enough selling. And I think the kind of ironic, optimistic view here is that we really are being pushed to do the best we can for ourselves, for our clients. And this challenge is also a huge opportunity to learn new strategies and to build new skills that sellers and sales leaders and sales teams can use even in healthy markets.
Well, and I love that your first thought is already one key insight, and that is that sometimes the market's better than you think it is, right? Sometimes it's chattering on. It's the talking heads have to keep things rolling, and in reality, your market is what your market is, and a lot of that is what you make of it. That said, it's well to be well prepared. I mean, sometimes if you don't think about these things, that can also be a big issue because then it can kind of bite you, and you're not ready for it. So I'm excited that we're going to be sharing with our listeners ways that they can do just that. They can be well prepared in advance. By the way, a friendly reminder to our live audience, being here live has a lot of advantages, not the least of which is you can have your questions answered right here by the expert. When we get to the bottom of the half hour here, we're going to revert over to a Q&A as our custom is here on Evolve Sales Live. Don't wait for the end. Go ahead and put your questions in chat right now. We'll bank those and we'll come back to those at the end. So Meghann, if you would lead off, tell us a little bit about what are some of the biggest issues you're seeing with sales teams, perhaps by way, like let's talk about the gap before we start to fill it. In other words, like where are teams finding themselves flat-footed when market conditions make sudden shifts?
So I love this question. And my answer actually goes back to something you said earlier, which is that a lot of times I see sales leaders trying to pretend like everything's fine. This actually comes from a lot of sellers that I talk to. I also do individual sales coaching. And sometimes I hear, my sales leader is just acting like these numbers are okay, or, kind of placing the blame on individual salespeople. And for me, the first step is just awareness. It is being 100% transparent with you, with the team. And I think that this is hard for sales leaders because we want to be positive and we don't want to create fear. And if you look at the average tenure of sales leaders, unfortunately, there is a lot of other pressure that gets added to sales leaders, even more so than normal. So you also want to, you want to be positive for investors. But for me, when we think about just really getting aware of where you are, where you stand, it can provide that agility, the ability to work really quickly to I love what you said earlier, like find the opportunity here because the market may be bad for some clients, but not for others. So there are three questions I would ask in terms of really getting aware. The first one, how are your clients doing? And by the way, that's a little bit of a nuanced question because a lot of times, different clients are doing differently, right? So, one thing I always recommend is really thinking about like of your territory, of the prospects, of your current clients. Who may need a little bit more support, who may be really struggling. Um, are there actually some industries or some types of clients that may be thriving that actually might have additional budget? And so getting really clear there can be very helpful in terms of knowing where you want to focus your energy and knowing that you might have to do a little bit of hard work, right? And like reprioritizing territory, rethinking about different clients, and also thinking about the value props. It might be a little bit more around security and stability, um, you know, rather than previously it was about growth and revenue. So definitely like the first question is, how are my clients doing? And I'm curious how you ever seen that how do you think about that shift?
Yeah, well, what I like about that is it gets us out of the trap of worrying about our position in a market that's shifting, right?
Mhm.
If as sales professionals, our goal should be to serve that client. And so if we are thinking about what's going on with them, we've already done ourselves a big favor, as
Yeah,
opposed to, uh-oh, what am I going to do now? Well, what you're going to do now is continue to serve clients and in a way that makes the most sense with what's happening in reality with them. And you may find out some of them are they're buying up. I mean, what looks bad in the news might be an opportunity for them. You don't know. And others, hey, maybe it's time to push the pause button. I really like that you basically what I'm hearing in a nutshell is, hey, just let's just take a sensible look at this thing. Let's take a real analysis of what's actually happening instead of being sort of just emoting based on what we're being told by, again, those talking heads. They're gonna come in for a lot of abuse, I think, in this particular show, the chattering heads, because they don't maybe serve us very well on this particular issue. Would you agree?
absolutely. And I do think that also relates to not only your clients, but to salespeople. I think that a lot of times we are, just any shift in anything, a process, the market, territories, even just simple policies, even where, like what coffee you serve in your office, if you still have an office, salespeople are going to have reactions. But I do think the second question we need to ask ourselves in terms of awareness is how are my sellers doing? And not only sentiment, but especially right now, I think that I've been working with Andy Paul, partnering on a coaching program. And one thing he talks about constantly is win rate and how we are pretty predictable in terms of, a lot of times forecast accuracy and things like that, in terms of predicting that we don't have very high win rates. And what I mean by that is, just the number of deals that we win versus a lose. And so for me, it has been a huge opportunity to look at different metrics. I think so many times because a lot of times like the industry averages are very low in the deals that we're winning, we have to bring on more pipeline. And one thing I hear constantly right now is pipeline is like nowhere to be found. Let's be real, like I said in the previous question, when we do think about, updating value props, making sure we're targeting the right people, that can be impacted. But I do think that right now it's a huge opportunity, and almost a little bit of a necessity to really focus on the sales process. Really, going a little bit slower, making sure that we're actually helping our buyers understand the shifts. Because one part of that understanding how your clients are doing is knowing that in markets like this, what typically happens is there's not as much budget overall, right? So there's not going to be as much opportunity for nice to have options. No one likes to think that they're nice to have, but a lot of times we're moving a little bit too fast with the sales process. And so even just thinking about overall deal health, one of the things that I do for clients is implement a framework called MEDIC, which is essentially like a deal scorecard, making sure that we're not just rushing through every opportunity because we have fewer of them, but we're actually leveraging a lot of strategy to make sure we're uncovering pain and gain, make sure we have a really good understanding. We're not making any assumptions, even for existing clients, about what the budget process is, what approval process looks like. And again, some of those changing value props, right? They may be dealing with different things or trying to achieve different things. Um, the buying process may be completely different than even the previous year.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that when it comes to mapping back to that question of how are my salespeople doing, it really comes back to us trying to not just add more and more and more pipeline and salespeople and strategies and and even just, try to get more pipeline, try to get more prospects. I do think that it's not sustainable. And I think that right now in a bad market, it's a huge opportunity to do things a little bit differently, to focus on, higher win rates, better performance per salesperson. And as all hopefully we have a lot of salespeople on the phone as well, this is a huge opportunity to lean into your own, investing in your own strategies as well.
Well, and I think when there's not quantity, this is a chance to focus on quality.
Exactly.
And but that does take a very clear process to go through and talk about the deal health as you referred to it. Let's really know what we have. What is the actual state of our pipeline? Um, does that actually put a little bit more pressure, do you think, on management to kind of get involved with that then and kind of work through one by one? Hey, let's take it. Let's really get into this pipeline one by one with your people. Is that sort of a given?
I don't know. You would think it would be, right? But I think that I'm like, I don't wanna say it, but I'm gonna say it. So, what I typically see is even more micromanagement at times like this.
Hmm.
Managers, are stretched thin, they have more pressure on themselves, and a lot of times they don't know how to do it they don't know how to do it either. Um, so I do think that there is for me, how I would be thinking about it as both a sales leader and a salesperson is knowing that what worked for you previously, maybe, how you got into sales leadership, how you got into, a high level sales role, it might not work. And so I do think there's a little bit of a plateau for some people, especially those natural salespeople, um, in terms of it is a hard market and it is going to be a lot harder to build business cases, to allocate budget, to know what clients are struggling with, but even being smarter, not even smarter, but helping your clients anticipate the challenges they may have as well before they even know it. So I do think that this for me is where really that leveling up happens and it's strategy, right? It's better understanding, like getting even better at understanding the buying process, understanding gain, pain, building strong champions, multi-threading. It's all these things that are buzzwords in sales training, right? But I do think that it right now, a lot more people, both sales leaders and salespeople, are coming to me as a trainer, saying, "Hey, like I had a prospect from huge sales company, went through a lot of layoffs. One thing I heard was I just had someone who got laid off and their performance wasn't terrible."
Hmm.
And I think there's also just, this overall, it kind of shows that, like, even if you have a job at one of the top
Hmm.
sales teams in the world that's, like, really popular and is known for their training, good enough isn't good enough anymore.
Hmm. Got to be ready for those changes. So
Yeah.
well, we're working our way through what it's turning out to be the Misiak AAA method of building a recession-proof team. I'll bill you for that later. But so we got awareness. This is where we start. What else do we need to be doing in this awareness phase of your approach here?
Yeah, so, if that was a little bit more, hypothetical, reflective, I mean, I think it's the number one thing, right? But once we know a little bit, you get that awareness, um, we can take some action. So I want to get pretty tactical here. I did get out some ideas, what I've seen work previously, as well as just some ideas for really like getting creative with some of these things. And I do want to highlight, in awareness is also just an inherent vulnerability. Again, I think that salespeople and sales leaders, we don't want to admit that we don't know. We don't have all the answers. We don't know sometimes how to move forward, but even just admitting that can open a lot of conversations. So even some of my actions are continuing on that thread of vulnerability. But the first thing that my last full-time role when COVID hit, what we did was we actually added a category in Salesforce in our CRM that was COVID impact. And this was our sales ops team. They did an incredible job literally categorizing every single prospect based on it was like 3 or 4 fields of like highly impacted, aka negative impact from COVID, or positive impact. And we actually recalibrated our entire territory. It's like probably about 2,000 prospects
Hmm.
based on that. But I think the overall thing is like, again, reassessing who makes a good target and why, changing your value props, changing your messaging, getting ahead of it, not just saying, hey, how are you? Just checking in and like basically just waiting for everyone to be like, I'm so sorry, everything's on pause. But literally like becoming the person they go to because you're actually you're ahead of it, right? You're saying,
Hmm.
hey, here's 3 things we're hearing from our clients in this space. Happy to talk you through this. Happy to tell you a little bit of what we're seeing in the field and how you can anticipate these things and work through them. And overall, even having events like that, right? Like, I think the second leading into one of my second tips is becoming an expert. And I know it's hard because people are like, I don't know what's happening. But when you can really get ahead of it, become an expert in terms of the market shifts, all these things, even when I say become an expert, even just sharing, hey, these are 3 things I've heard from the last 3 clients that I've spoken with. These are the things they're worried about. These are the things they're thinking through. And these are some of the ways that they've struggled to get this project done. Because ultimately, you have to remember that, like, your client, they wanna get it done too. So even you sharing what has been a struggle for other clients, right? Whether that's, getting access to budget, whether it's, "Hey, like, we, got to the final stages, and they said that they actually had, like, 3 additional steps that my champion didn't know about." So I'm curious, maybe we can check in with your team and just make sure, our budget's, still on track? Has anything changed in approval process? Just asking some of those questions and again, getting ahead of it, can actually really continue to build the trust with the clients because they're probably freaking out just as much as we are as salespeople, if not more.
Yeah. One thing I love about that too, you mentioned Andy Paul. He was on the show just a few weeks ago. Our conversation was around, in part at least, why a lot of our buyers don't want to talk to salespeople. I
Yeah.
laugh, but it's kind of not funny, but it also kind of is. One of the reasons, and Andy Paul points this out very succinctly, is you're not offering value. Like in our busy day, if someone is on my phone, it's already a distraction. That's a given. And if you're also not adding value, it goes to like on 0 to 10 level of I want to get rid of you, it goes to 10. I want to get rid of you, right? As opposed to if you're adding value, maybe it's 10. Hey, I'd love to listen to you. And if you really embrace what you were just sharing there, that's very powerful insight.
Yeah, and I'll give you, just whether you're a sales leader, a salesperson, one of the things that, I use, it is a framework called MEDIC. And by the way, so John, you were like, I don't know what MEDIC is. What is this? How do I say this? It actually is a framework that was built in the 90s by a tech company for elite enterprise deals. And it actually is just an acronym that represents every single element in any enterprise deal. So it's metrics, economic buyer, decision criteria, decision process, identified pain, champion, and competition. And you're like, wow, that's like pretty complex. Well, yeah, if you're selling complex deals, for me, I got into sales training because I was doing okay, but I wasn't doing as well as I wanted to. And so for me, having, a checklist that I could literally work through with my client to say, hey, okay, so like, how do we have a really good understanding of what they're trying to achieve, how they're measuring it. And it also is a really good opportunity to challenge yourself to say, have I actually like checked all of these boxes? Not only for me as a salesperson to win the deal, but again, like the ironic thing that I think a lot of salespeople forget is that if you've actually tapped into what your clients want, they want to get the project done, aka the deal closed, as much as you do. And so for me, when I do these checklists, what it helps with is before each meeting, I'm literally doing this checklist to see what me and my champion need to complete in order to build their understanding of the problem, to help them understand, what they should be thinking about, what they should be looking for, what's important to them. But more importantly, the cool part of that is that usually at the end of every call, I'm like, hey, so how are you feeling? What are you concerned about? What questions do you have? And they, go into a little spiel. And usually I say, hey, so, I know that you want to get this done. I know that this is really important to you to solve. Can I just share a few things I'm a bit worried about at this stage? And clients' reaction, they're like, what? You're not just a normal salesperson who's like, yeah, everything's great. Let's book the next meeting. Let's get 25 people on it,
Hmm.
They're really, again, it goes back to that awareness, being really aware of what your gaps are in this deal and working with your client to actively solve them. For me, this is what is going to really make the difference between good sellers and great sellers. And I'll give you a quick example of that. So for me, in one of my deals, because I'm actually a rare medic trainer that actually uses medic in my own sales process. But I was going through, one of my largest deals, and we had built the business case so collaboratively. I describe myself as a collaborative seller. We had built it so collaboratively that, it was like 15 pages long and it was really extensive. And, my champion, where they were like, we are good to go. All we need is sign off from the CRO. And I was like, okay, so, personally, I'm super thankful for all the work we've done together. I feel really confident in what we put together. I do have a few concerns, though. Can I share those? And I think one of them was that I personally had not met the CRO. So I was like, one of the ways that I've seen deals fall through is if the CRO sees this and it's not in his language, it's not mapping to like his pet projects that he has to report on to the investors. Maybe he doesn't know as much of the pain that we have listed here. So I really want to challenge us. Are there any final opportunities for us to, go through this and really make it more centric to his goals? Also, actively challenging them and saying, hey, like, these are the 3 objections you're probably going to get from him. How much, how soon, and how sure. I just want to go through and, you're probably going to get these from him if I'm on the call or maybe outside of a call with me. How well do you feel like you're able to answer those questions? And third, for me, it's always like, is anyone else potentially involved that we haven't talked to? Your tech team, your sales operations, like anyone who could derail this, because I've seen it literally take weeks longer if we don't, think of those people and getting them involved a little bit earlier. And so like those are 3 big objections. And I'll be honest, 2 of them, they were like, hey, actually, we literally just sold another deal. We got it through. There weren't any, other people involved. We've already, checked with them, et cetera. But there was a big one with the CRO where they're like, actually, you're right. Maybe we can just bring you into a meeting with him just to make sure like every question can be answered. So again, like getting that level of, it brings in awareness, but it also brings in that strategy and really knowing, again, where do I stand? And not only, yeah, we can probably get this deal done without these. It might not be an issue, but proactively bringing those things up for me, like anxiety is my superpower in sales, and it works now better than ever.
Well, I love that because you're really positioning yourself as a true advisor like that.
Yeah.
Confidence is the number one factor in making deals close versus not close. Like your confidence level, I think most of us know that, but how confident does that? How much confidence does that project when are coming at it that way? It also seems more like a servant-oriented angle as opposed to a self-serving angle.
Yeah.
There's a lot to recommend that. So tell us a little bit more about that. How can you actually, this? I'm sure a lot of our listeners, this is a new methodology. Where would they go to find out more about that?
Yeah, so I actually I am a medic trainer. I do work with organizations to whether it's doing medic trainings, helping you create a custom scorecard. I also do group coaching. So I'm doing a program launching in Q2 for any sellers or small sales teams that want to do group training on this framework. But I actually give away my medic deal scorecard for free. So it is literally a checklist. You answer questions. It is a template, so it might not be 100% relevant, or feel free to make a copy, make it yours. But what I find is that even just going through the questions, usually people come to me and they're like, um, is this what I'm supposed to be doing in the sales process? Because I'm not doing a lot of this.
Yeah.
And so it is a huge reflection, in terms of that awareness, in terms of, what you might be doing. But also, most of the time, people have some of those like, oh no moments
Yeah.
where they're like, wow, I have a huge amount of opportunity to grow. I'm not doing well enough in this area. So it's a great, free resource to help you with your self-awareness. Also really good for teams. Whether it's like using a deal scorecard in a team exercise and saying, hey, so like, thanks for one of the volunteers, one of the salespeople. Let's go through this. Let's see what can we do to strengthen this deal. And also, one of the cool parts about the spreadsheet is that it's actually even populates a deal health score, which is definitely something that I think that sales team should really think about implementing. I know that it, is a little bit more complex and might be a little bit more advanced of a strategy, but again, on top of win rate, really making sure that each deal is healthy, that you've answered why change, why you, why now effectively is critical, especially when we have fewer ops and we have to focus on quality over quantity.
Well, I love that resource. And I know you have one more offering we're going to share with the listener. But before we do that, give us 60 seconds, if you would, on your third A of the three. You mentioned awareness and action, and agility was the third A in the Misiak AAA methodology here. So tell us a little bit more about that in 60 quick seconds.
Yeah. So for me, when I look at sellers as well as sales leaders who really excel, not only in short term, but long term, you can give me a natural salesperson with natural skills. But personally, I prefer the person who is constantly learning. They never, assume anything. They're constantly growing, constantly evolving. They're working through their comfort zones. And I think that skill really shines right now. So for me, agility, it really means both at a team level and as at a salesperson level. It's asking for help, it's being vulnerable, it's truly seeking to understand, not just to do. And so one also idea that I have for really like addressing agility at a team wide level is it is a cool opportunity to ask your team to practice agility. So one idea we can do is actually have a hackathon where you're saying like, hey, these are the three biggest issues we are facing right now. Like, who has ideas? And asking your team to come up with ideas to help you solve these problems, getting them, encouraging innovation, encouraging agility, getting new ideas, and also as a sales leader, getting everyone to literally be bought into change and ideas and new projects can be incredibly effective for actually managing some of that change.
I love that. So I love the action orientation that's come out in our conversation today, Megan, and it's gone by way too quickly. I know our listener would love to take things further. They'll take full advantage of the Medic Deal Scorecard. You have one other really interesting offering for the listener to go further with your insights. What was that you were talking to me about earlier?
Yeah. So on my website, I actually have virtual coffee sign up. So whether it's sales leader, even salespeople, I'm always willing to meet with people. I have, a few hours every week. So if you want to pick my brain, if you want to geek out on sales, if you want to learn a little bit more about how you can really, work through performance plateaus, or if you want to, of course, like talk about, training for your team or how to really build agility and help your team through this challenging market, feel free for you to book a 30-minute virtual coffee with me. So thanks for linking that.
Yeah, I love that. So, well, we're about to go ahead and veer over into our Q&A. I do want to flash a brief graphic on the screen. This MEDDIC methodology is a pretty fascinating approach to doing an analysis of your deal health and being well prepared for any market conditions or shifts that might come up. We'll put that on the screen for for our LinkedIn Live audience members, also replay audience members that will be looking at this in weeks to come. But it is now time. We're going to go over to Q&A and get some real-time answers from our expert on tap. Let me take a look here and see what we've got. So one LinkedIn user is asking this question, Meghann, do you feel it could be too seller focused? I guess, is there a caveat with applying this methodology, this MEDDIC, even though it's thoroughly organized for the process? I guess you can do it wrong. Maybe talk to us about how you can, this can be a misfire if you don't go about it the right way.
Oh, I'm so glad that this question was brought up because when I say I'm a MEDDIC trainer, people are always like, ugh, another framework that, I would say there's probably two biggest complaints about MEDDIC. One is that it is seller centric. Two, that it is almost too complex. So I'm glad that this one was brought up because, yes, I absolutely agree that one of the biggest challenges that I actually work through with organizations as well as individuals is making it buyer centric. So I hope that even the way that, I was talking through the way that I use a very collaborative sales process shows you how I've almost like given MEDDIC a little bit of a refresh to make it more buyer specific. So a very quick example here is, and by the way, I'm actually working with a partner. I don't want to release the details yet, but we're actually going to be releasing MEDDIC paired with another framework and it like completely revamping MEDDIC later this year. But I'll give you one example. So within MEDDIC, even in my scorecard, I have you collaborated with your champion to build a mutual action plan that helps them like get this deal done by the time like of their compelling event. And like that is very like salesy in terms of the internal jargon and everything. But I also do believe that that's why MEDDIC coaching and MEDDIC training and really working with you to make sure that we're consistently in the client's mindset is important.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I mean, frameworks, if so, people do sometimes roll their eyes at them, right? I get that. But hey, we're talking about a recipe, really. I don't think it was a recipe. I enjoy cooking as a bit of a hobby. And hey, I like to have a good recipe. I mean, I'm going to riff on that recipe. It's doubtful I'm going to follow it to a T, but I like having that starting point. It still gives me some guidance, maybe even comparing recipes allows me to feel a little more confident with my own intuitions on that dish. And I kind of see, we're cooking up a better approach here in a way. And a good framework is like a good recipe. For what it's worth, that's my 2 cents. What do you think, Meghann?
100%. And there's actually a reason why my MEDDIC scorecard is a Google document because I'm constantly evolving it. And I will say that people like a strategy, people use it for good, they can use it for evil. I'm joking when I say for evil, but I do think that mutual action plans are a really good example because that's usually why I work with organizations like longer term and work with individual salespeople usually for like a year or two at least, because even when you're trying to implement something like a mutual action plan, it takes a lot to make it client centric, to work through some of the kinks there in terms of like how you're positioning it. And I will say that this outside of MEDDIC, the number one thing that I challenge people on, the salespeople I work with, the organizations, is taking it out of this is what I need to do to get the deal done, and more so around that's why I actually like the idea of deal health,
Mm.
um, because it's how can I enable my champion to buy from me, right?
Mm.
Like, how can I enable them to get this project done, to see the most value, to streamline the entire experience? Because your champion is the internal salespeople, your
Mm.
salesperson, right? Like, people forget that it's not you against your champion. It should be you and your champion partnering to get everyone else on board with it. Sometimes even your sales leader, right? We can use a strategy called othering. But I think that like one of the biggest things for me is helping salespeople truly put themselves on the same side of the table. Um, and to your point, medic, it is only a recipe, right? For me,
Mm.
medic is like a checklist. It actually, one of, as a sales trainer, also why I give away this for free is that medic doesn't tell you like how to get it done, right? It just exposes the things that you may not have checked off yet. So with any framework, checklist, anything like this, I think that this is probably the biggest challenge that salespeople have, is putting yourself on the same side of the table as your buyer,
Mm.
and truly being client centric. And like I said, for me, the way I've done this is what I call collaborative selling. Even when I do pricing, I actually like don't call them like proposals or anything. I actually say it's a pricing workshop. So there's a lot of really cool ways I think that, I've also been learning and implementing and trying to make it more client centric.
Makes a lot of sense. I like that. Sometimes just changing the nomenclature can make a big difference. It changes your mindset. Language is
For
so
years.
critical.
Yeah.
So here's a good question too. This is kind of coming maybe from the opposite. We've been talking about having a carefully constructed line by line approach. Well, here comes a new player in the space of selling. He says, or at least has a new product. Excuse me. I don't know, Jordan, if you're new or not. Forgive me,
Mhm.
but you have a new product where you have a huge pricing advantage, and right now their approach is to play that up. Hey, we're only 8% of what you're spending right now. He's having some success. Could you share some of your general thoughts on that as a strategy overall?
Hmm. Okay, so it's so interesting because I definitely see some teams where cost is the main driver. But what that fails to recognize is the cost of change.
Hmm.
People forget that it's not just like, I mean, I kind of like a different type of phone than an iPhone. Like, I really like the camera on the Samsung. Why have I not switched from an iPhone? Because it would take hours to change over the technology,
Yeah.
even though there's benefits, even though it's literally cheaper. And I know that's a silly example, but that's what we as sellers forget. We think that it's literally just the cost of the technology. We don't think about the cost. And by the way, cost is more than money. It's more than revenue. It's there's so many, but a few ideas here. One, are you actually thinking about is there any value, right? They actually might think, okay, cool, this is cheaper, but if you actually position yourself as cheaper, they might think of you as a less valuable. Literally as less valuable, right? Like, is it an apples to apples comparison?
Yeah.
Because they probably don't trust that. They might actually see the negative cost would be losing features, losing functions, and they might not even for them trust themselves enough to even like be able to truly assess that. There's also for them, if they switch and it doesn't go well, there's reputational cost,
Yeah.
there's performance cost. Also, I have tried to implement a new system or to change systems. There's also just the logistical nightmare of
Yeah.
doing so. What are you going to lose in terms of data? What are you going
Right.
to lose in terms of, data, in terms of even just like people not using it, adoption, because people are used to using a software, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that you're only selling based on cost, um, and literal like contract cost, it really is limiting yourself because you're not recognizing the full spectrum of what people kind of consider in terms of cost versus value. as well as the broader cost of making a change.
Well, and I agree 100%, Megan. I think underpricing can sometimes be an even worse mistake than being too expensive for your marketplace. That's an easier adjustment to make. Oh, well, okay, we'll work something out. You can either add value or work on the pricing. If you're coming in too low, those perceptual shifts are much more difficult to overcome. Probably that means that part of your work, Jordan, if I may add, is to make it easy. Like, make it clear. And now it sounds like your CRM, so it's not going to be quite as difficult with that as maybe some other solutions, but still, you got to remember those other costs. We're to reckon with those and be ready, because maybe some of your biggest accounts are going to be most concerned with some of these issues.
Yes.
I've got another listener here that has a really great name. His name is Jonathan, and he's asking, "What do you recommend about ghosted leads?" And I mean, gosh, when times get rough, that's where, I mean, as a manager and business owner myself, I'm thinking, yeah, let's go. What we already have, let's every resource. Let's look down through these lists. Let's pull them together. What is there a little bit of juice in this lemon? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I do weekly coaching for actually for sales leaders as well as for founders. And this is, I feel like it comes up every time, especially around this time of year. It comes around like every few weeks.
Hmm.
So my always consistent go-to tips here: first, stop checking in. No one cares about, checking in, just seeing how things are going. Lead with value. So, one of the ways that I like to, bring this back up is to say, hey, wanted to, I know that this was really important to you. This being, I knew that when we last spoke, these were the three things that you were extremely focused on. I know that things may have shifted, for me, typically it's for one of these three reasons. One, maybe the timing is not right. Maybe you're focused on other things. Maybe your team is really, prioritizing other projects, and there's some bandwidth challenges, or maybe there's been a huge change in what y'all are focused on, and this isn't actually as much of a priority, right? So I'm just curious and you can change the three reasons, but I'm just curious, what is it for you and your team? I'm happy to help you move forward in whatever way makes sense. If they don't respond, then again, lead with value. You can send like what we call a breakup email, but sometimes also what we were talking about earlier, this idea of really bringing in expertise, and also for me, bringing in some compassion. So one of the things I like to do is send a little bit of a pattern disrupt email and send something helpful, valuable, educational, but not like following up for the 15th time. So even say, hey, saw this, thought of you very specifically for this reason, thought that you might find it valuable. Hope y'all are doing okay. Let me know if we can help in any way. I've had so many people being like, I'm so sorry. I know you've sent me 15 emails. We are just super busy. Thank you so much for sending this. This is definitely relevant. Can we maybe catch up in a month or two? We've just been super busy.
Love that. Love that. Classy, not begging, always offering value.
Yes.
Um, So let's close out our Q&A time. We got one more here. You're going to have this is sort of like a flash challenge here. Okay. So Ian Horowitz has a talented person who seems undermotivated right now. Like, what in the world? Can you help me and break this individual loose and get him performing?
One, ask. There could be a lot going on. And I think when we say, checked out, hasn't been working hard, we don't know. And I think that, also coming at it from a point of compassion, saying, hey, so, I really care about you. And I have noticed some changes in your performance and your behavior. And I really want to know what's going on so I can support you. Um, and, I'm, if you have asked, I think there's also like asking a few more times. So to give you some examples of what it could be, again, we don't want to make assumptions, but for me, being a sales trainer internally and doing sales coaching for individual salespeople that a lot of times are top performers. Literally, one of my clients a few years ago was like already at 300% when he came to me. Um, it could be a few things, right? It could be this person has had some things going on in their personal life where they don't have the bandwidth, where they're really struggling emotionally. And, that might just be a timing thing. It could be that maybe they have other things, right? COVID, the market, losing a lot of money. Like, it could be a lot of different things. Also, this person could be burnt out. Person could be a little bit bored. And so I do think that those are three very different examples with three very different ways of handling them. But I do think that what I've been hearing personally from top salespeople, most of my clients are top performers, I want to get better, is a combination of one of those. I will say a lot of people are feeling less stable and secure than ever before, and is causing a lot of overwhelm. It's causing a lot of challenges with time management, with like even just like being able to focus. Because when you're stressed, when you don't feel secure, it really can impact your performance as well. So that's actually one of the biggest things that I work on. Also, why a lot of managers actually refer me to their salespeople to help people work through. And right now, one of the top things that I would say the most consistent trainings that I do and kind of areas of focus for me with top performers is time management, and not only managing their time, but really figuring out how to form a better foundation of mental health, of energy, and overall of wellness, so that they can actually continue to perform at peak levels.
Well, I love it. Well, an absolute championship level answer. Thank you for that, Meghann. And I want to thank you for adding so much value to our audience today. You did a fantastic job. Obviously, you have a wealth of insight to share, and I hope the listener will pursue that further with you. Thanks for being on the show today, Meghann. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
And we appreciate our audience. We're sponsored very proudly by Overpass, one of the world's best solutions for getting pre-vetted talent on tap quickly. If you need a team of SDRs, AE, full cycle people, folks just to work the phones who know what in the world they're doing, and you need them fast, go to overpass.com, start your free account, and check out just how easy it is to work with them over there at Overpass. By the way, if you've been enjoying the guests in the show, you can check out previous episodes anytime you like by going to our podcast, which is the Evolved Sales Leader. Anywhere you like to get your podcast, whether that's Apple, Google, or wherever, we're there. Check it out, download it, use it during your workout time, your windshield time, and keep us in your world, helping make you better as you grow as a sales leader. And I want to thank all of you for being here today. Our wonderful listeners make the show possible. Thanks for being here today. We're going to be here at the same time, same station next week. We'll see you then. Signing off. Have a great weekend, everybody.